My project is called A Complex Identity of Victim and Perpetrator, the Fame of Gypsy Rose and Perceptions of Victimhood. The purpose of this study is to examine how Gypsy Rose Blanchard's actions and experiences have expanded definitions of victimhood by examining opinions on the issues that have arisen due to her newfound social media fame. In the literature review, I found that Anna Schnezel, Behrman, and Fallon argue for the direct link between labeling and stigma. And in the case of Gypsy Rose Blanchard, these labels would refer to victim and perpetrator, which would create a uniquely stigmatized identity for her. Jarrett 2016 found that, quote, trauma disrupts individuals' life stories, spurring trauma survivors to attempt to reconstruct a coherent life narrative. And so it would be difficult to know the actual effect that abuse and crime has had on Gypsy Rose's personhood and identity. But that's really about how the media is portraying her and how she is able to move forward, and whether or not the media is actually going to be beneficial for her growth as a human being post-release from prison. So the methods for the study, I had 4 different participants. They were all 18-year-old first-year college students who identified as female. I tried to keep relatively similar demographics for all the participants in order to best generalize the data. The interviews, which were conducted in a safe, private location, basically they first covered the idea of victimhood, then opinions on Gypsy Rose's initial crime and her status as a victim, and then I showed them the trailer for Lifetime's Gypsy Rose Life After Lockup and asked them questions regarding her portrayal in the trailer and their opinions on that. So in my results section, I had 4 major ideas come through. Firstly, participants had relatively similar definitions of victimhood. They all brought different perspectives on it, however, but they were all relatively the same. 2 participants argued that Gypsy Rose is a victim, while 1 participant argued that she is mainly a perpetrator. And participants agreed that Gypsy Rose Life After Lockup may not be accurate to the portrayal of Gypsy Rose Blanchard as a person and is likely driven by profit rather than education. And then finally, participants agreed that the fame Gypsy Rose has received may affect her growth in the future and may not actually be beneficial for her in the long run. I created a mind map with the 4 main topics in my results section, as well as specific quotes I drew from each of the interviews that I thought were interesting and brought a nuanced view and different ideas to the conversation. Those aren't all the quotes from the interviews, but those are just the ones that I found the most significant. In my discussion section, there was an interesting connection between the idea of excuses and punishment. So while my participants were relatively same in demographics, they still disagreed on Gypsy Rose's victimhood overall, and therefore they expressed the controversy that exists surrounding Gypsy Rose Blanchard and the idea of that uniquely stigmatized identity. And also, as a result of that, participants expressed a different opinion and how much time Gypsy Rose should spend in jail because of her time, how much punishment she should get. Then we have the effects of victim and criminal as label, so the idea that there's an inherent stigmatization attached to labels, and the idea that overall the labels of victim and criminal or victim and perpetrator lack nuance, and in cases like Gypsy Rose Blanchard's, nuance is needed. Then finally, we had the idea of rebuilding a life narrative in the spotlight, which goes back to Jarek's quote down at the bottom. But basically, it's the idea that Gypsy Rose Life After Lockup could be an attempt to rebuild her life narrative following her release from prison. However, the participants disagreed that this may not be healthy for her. So they argued that this will actually stunt her growth, and that is best left alone. Okay, and then future research. Obviously, I picked a very specific demographic, so future research should focus on people of varying races, ages, genders, education levels, etc. And then also, it is important to note that participants' opinions could have been affected by how much prior knowledge they had of Gypsy Rose before this interview. And so it would be interesting to kind of play around with how much prior knowledge the participants have before interviewing them. Thank you.